We sent you. Okay, so let's start off with this. What is the alt-right? So the alt-right is marching in the streets, and the alt-right is supposedly, there's a lot of misperception. People on the left are calling everyone on the right alt-right and saying everybody's a Nazi. That's absolute garbage. Okay, the alt-right is its own movement. The alt-right is a group of white supremacists who believe, essentially, that Western civilization is an outgrowth of white race, and that threats to white race are a threat to Western civilization. That's the basic premise of the alt-right. Okay, a lot of people think they're alt-right now because they like memes or because they believe in the god of Kek, right? Kek is this like memery that you see on 4chan and Reddit. A lot of people who think that if they post a frog, that makes them a member of the alt-right. That's not what the alt-right is. The alt-right has a basic root philosophy. What happened over time is that the alt-right was mainstreamed by a group of people who decided to broaden the definition to include people who liked frog memes. Okay, they decided to broaden the definition, and then they used that broadened definition in order to make the claim, basically, that they were a big movement that had a lot of support. And then you saw people like Donald Trump and Steve Bannon, yes, the President of the United States, yes, his chief strategist, give legitimacy to the alt-right and refuse to condemn them in the middle of the campaign, which gave them added impetus. And now you see them marching openly in the streets. So, was Charlottesville Trump's fault? No, of course Charlottesville wasn't Trump's fault, any more than what happened in Dallas a year ago was Barack Obama's fault, where a guy who believed a lot of the slogans of Black Lives Matter went out and shot a bunch of cops. Okay, you're only responsible for violence if you are rhetorically calling for violence. Trump has never done that. What he is responsible for, in some degree, is mainstreaming the alt-right and not treating them as a cancer to be excised from the conservative movement that they really are. Okay, and again, I'm talking about what the alt-right actually means, not what you think it means, not what people in the media think it means. The media has an interest in pretending the alt-right's a big movement that includes people like me. 2 weeks ago, they were labeling me alt-right. Okay, I was the #1 target of the alt-right in 2016. That's fully insane. And then there are a bunch of people in the alt-right who have a drive to call people alt-right who aren't, because that way they get to claim that they're a bigger movement than they are. But here's what the alt-right actually is. So some of the supposed thought leaders of the alt-right are people like Jared Taylor. Jared Taylor is the creator of American Renaissance, which is a racist website. And here is Jared Taylor talking about what exactly the alt-right is. Why don't we let the leaders of the alt-right define what the alt-right is? Here is Jared Taylor.
As a long-standing member of the alt-right, this is how I see it. We are a broad dissident movement that includes many different websites, organizations, and viewpoints. Some members hold distinctive positions on sex roles, trade and free markets, forms of government, and foreign policy. But they all agree on one thing: equality is a dangerous myth. The alt-right is united in rejecting the current dogma that all races are equal. Races are different. They differ in average levels of intelligence. They do not build identical societies. And there is no reason to think non-whites can maintain Western civilization, the civilization that whites created.
Okay, so that is Jared Taylor pointing. I mean, that's a very good synopsis of what the alt-right believes. And he's not the only one who says this. Richard Spencer, one of the guys who was at this rally yesterday, a sort of Nazi sympathizing piece of garbage. Here is Richard Spencer also summing up what the alt-right is.
Well, I would describe it, if I could sum it up in one word, I would say identity. It is an identitarian movement. It's an identity politics for white people in North America and really around the world. So that's what the alt-right is, just in one sentence or a bumper sticker.
Okay, and he's not the only one either. Vox Day, who's another member of the alt-right, again, one of the alt-right thought leaders. All these guys are very active online. All these guys are very active in promoting their perspective. They have a lot of followers on places like 4chan and Reddit, and they latched onto Trump for a reason I'll explain in a second. Here's Vox Day making the same exact description as Jared Taylor and Richard Spencer.
People tend to look at our Richard Spencer, who is the head of the National Policy Institute, and also some guys like Ramsey Paul. Some people even look at Mencius Moldbug and Nick Land, but they're really more neo-reactionaries than alt-right proper. Some folks have even looked at me. I think probably because Milo called me an alt-right figurehead a few months ago.
So this should be a fringe movement, right? A bunch of people who believe that equality before law is not a thing, that racial equality is not a thing, that even the concept of people being equal as individuals is not a thing because we are all characterized by our race. So this was a fringe movement. The left has made it more of a movement because the left has embraced an identity politics of its own. The left has basically said, okay, you are a white male. You white males, you exist because of white privilege, and therefore you must be moved out of power. right? We have identity politics. And so a lot of white people like Vox Day and Spencer and Taylor, they say in response, okay, well, you have your identity politics. We'll have our identity politics. We'll have white identity politics. We will be a group of people who stands up for white pride because white people are awesome, right? This has been the response. And that has come along with a lot of anti-SJW stuff. So a lot of people who are just anti-SJW, anti-social justice warrior, but who aren't believers in racial inequality and racial disparity, who aren't advocates of racism and anti-Semitism, a lot of those people, they fell into the trap of thinking that they are allies with people like Vox Day and Richard Spencer and Jared Taylor. And there have been a couple of figures who've been very prominent in helping to mainstream the alt-right. One of these, unfortunately, is a guy who directed a lot of his sort of alt-right followers at me on Twitter and became very popular, Milo Yiannopoulos. So Milo is very popular. He's very popular because a lot of the stuff that he said on campus, a year ago about feminism, a lot of it is irreverent, and some of it is funny, and all of it is crazy and out of the box. And he says inflammatory things deliberately, and all of this. Okay. But Milo was very, very instrumental in mainstreaming the alt-right and treating the alt-right as an intellectual movement that ought to be respected and given its fair hearing. This was his shtick, right? His shtick was he was going to pander to the alt-right. He later came out and said, I separate off from the alt-right. They're not me. I have problems with the alt-right. But that didn't stop him from going on national television and talking up the alt-right and saying he just wanted to give them a fair hearing. Here he is on CNBC last year doing exactly this.
No, I mean, I've never identified as the alt-right. The press seems determined to crown me the queen of it. All I've done is give them a fair hearing in the press. I think that white identity and white nationalism is a little misleading. I think it's more accurate to say that the alt-right cares about Western supremacy rather than white supremacy. It cares about Western values. It cares about liberal, capitalist, Western democracy, democratic values, freedom, equality, that kind of thing. And it sees, various threats to those on various fronts.
Okay, so you see what he's doing here. Okay, Milo knows better than this, okay, because he's been dealing in these circles for a long time. He apparently used to call himself Milo Wagner, okay? Milo knows what he is doing here. And what he is doing here is he's broadening the definition of alt-right. It's very clever. He's broadening the definition of alt-right on national television to now encompass a larger group. And this serves two people, right? Or it serves two groups. It serves the alt-right itself, which now gets to claim a larger constituency. And it serves the left, which gets to lump in everybody who believes in Western civilization with people like Jared Taylor, Richard Spencer, and Vox Day. Here's Milo writing on the alt-right last year. This was the seminal piece that really brought the alt-right to public knowledge. Is a piece called The Establishment Conservative's Guide to the Alt-Right. It was written by Milo along with a guy named Alan Bakari who wrote at Breitbart.com. This is about a month after I left Breitbart. And here's what Milo wrote. Quote, there are many things that separate the alternative right from old school racist skinheads. Alternative right is a term coined by Richard Spencer. That is alt-right. Alt-right stands for alternative right. There are many things that separate the alternative right from old school racist skinheads to whom they are often idiotically compared. But one thing stands out above all else: intelligence. Skinheads, by and large, are low-information, low-IQ thugs, driven by the thrill of violence and tribal hatred. The alternative right are a much smarter group of people, which perhaps suggests why the left hates them so much. Right? The left doesn't hate them because they're racist. The left hates them because they're dangerous. They're dangerously bright. This is all Milo, okay? This is Milo writing. The media empire of the modern-day alternative right coalesced around Richard Spencer during his editorship of Takis magazine. In 2010, Spencer founded AlternativeRight.com, which would become a center of alt-right thought. Alongside other nodes of Steve Saylor's blog VDare and American Renaissance, Alternative Right became a gathering point for an eclectic mix of renegades who objected to the established political consensus in some form or other. You see what's happening here? Do you see how evil what's happening here is? Taking the evil philosophy of people like Jared Taylor and Richard Spencer and Vox Day. Milo wrote the foreword to Vox Day's book, okay? They're taking the political philosophy that Milo knows well and then broadening it out to suggest that it applies to everyone who wants to defend Western civilization. I want to defend Western civilization. I've spent my entire career defending Western civilization. I've spent my entire career defending the Declaration and the Constitution. My original break with Milo online actually came not over the Michelle Field stuff or the Trump stuff or any of that stuff. They deleted his account, so you should be able to look it up. But it came originally over Milo suggesting that constitutional conservatism was dead and ought to be replaced by the alternative right. Okay, that's where the break came on Twitter. So what he did here by mainstreaming the alt-right was create the feeling that they were a burgeoning movement. It wasn't just Milo, there were other people doing it too. Steve Bannon, who at the time was running Breitbart, which was making Milo its star figurehead, Steve Bannon said, we are the meeting place for the alt-right. He celebrated that they were the meeting place for the alt-right. Then he became the head of Trump's campaign, and now he's the chief strategist at the White House. And meanwhile, President Trump, and yes, Trump bears some responsibility in the growth of the alt-right. President Trump, we will just go right through the timeline. He continually, during the campaign, refused to disassociate from alt-right figures or even racist figures. Okay, this is, I hate to go back and play this stuff, but it's now relevant, okay? Here's a flashback. This is from March 2016, the same month that Milo wrote this piece. This is Trump refusing to denounce the KKK and David Duke.
Well, just so you understand, I don't know anything about David Duke, okay? I don't know anything about what you're even talking about with white supremacy or white supremacists. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know, did he endorse me or what's going on? Because, you know, I know nothing about David Duke. I know nothing about white supremacists. And so you're asking me a question that I'm supposed to be talking about people that I know nothing about.
But I guess the question from the Anti-Defamation League is, even if you don't know about their endorsement, there are these groups and individuals endorsing you. Would you just say unequivocally you condemn them and you don't want their support?
Well, I have to look at the group. I mean, I don't know what group you're talking about. You wouldn't want me to condemn a group that I know nothing about. I'd have to look. If you would send me a list of the groups, I will do research on them, and certainly I would disavow if I thought there was something wrong. But you may have groups in there that are totally fine, and it would be very unfair. So give me a list of the groups, and I'll let you know.
Okay, and then Tapper kept repeating the Ku Klux Klan, and Trump wouldn't go there. Okay, that was not the only time Trump did this. Trump was asked on national television by Wolf Blitzer on CNN about denouncing anti-Semitic attacks on a journalist named Julia Jaffe.
I haven't read the article, but I heard it was a very inaccurate article, and I heard it was a nasty article. I'm married to a woman who's a very fine woman. She's a very fine woman. She doesn't need this, believe me. She was very, very successful. She did tremendously well as a top model. She made a lot of money. And she's a nice person. And I guess some of the article says that she would go in at night and she would stay. She wasn't a party person. It's not her thing. But this is a very high quality woman who loves people and has a big heart. She doesn't need to have bad things said about her. And I heard the article was nasty. Now, I haven't read it, but I heard the article was not what it should be. They shouldn't be doing that with wives. I mean, they shouldn't be doing that. Melania, as a top model, they sent pictures around to Utah, and it wasn't even, it wasn't even like a naked
that followed these anti-Semitic
I don't know about that. I don't know anything about that. You mean fans of mine?
Supposed fans of yours posting these very angry.
You'll have to talk to them about it.
But your message to these fans is?
I don't have a message to the fans. A woman wrote a article that was inaccurate. Now, I'm used to it. I get such bad articles.
So again, there's another incident where Trump did this. And again, Steve Bannon at the same time talking about how his website is the meeting place for the alt-right. And so what happens that the alt-right believes that because Trump is anti-political correctness and because he's anti-SJW and because he keeps refusing to denounce the alt-right in any sort of vigorous terms, and Trump never has a problem denouncing his enemies in vigorous terms, they begin to latch on to him. And that's not entirely Trump's fault, but it's at least partially Trump's fault. And so that's why in Charlottesville, you see David Duke marching around talking about how Charlottesville is really about Trump.
What does today represent to you? The camera's right here. What does today represent to you?
How you doing? This represents a turning point for the people of this country. We are determined to take our country back. We're going to fulfill the promises of Donald Trump. That's what we believed in. That's why we voted for Donald Trump, because he said he's going to take our country back, and that's what we got to do.
Okay, so the fact is, okay, and these are unpopular things to say. I know a lot of the people who listen to the show voted for Trump. I'm not blaming you for voting for Trump. I never blamed anyone for voting for Trump to stop Hillary Clinton. But to pretend that Donald Trump didn't have to do with looking the other way with a lot of this stuff during the campaign would be just factually untrue. It would be factually untrue. And I think it's important for us as constitutional conservatives to call out bad things when they happen, to call out evil ideologies when they crop up. The alt-right is an evil ideology, this ideology that says white nationalism, this ideology that says that race is inseparably tied from ideology. That's what I hate about the left. I hate the identity politics of the left, and I don't believe in the identity politics of the right. It's evil. It's nasty. You think I stand with the people who are flying Nazi flags and Confederate flags and David Duke marching around? Why is this difficult? This is the easiest thing in the fricking world to denounce. Just denounce it. What the hell is wrong with people? And this idea that we went for a year without denouncing it, or making excuses for it, or patting it on the head because we thought it was an important movement, an important constituency. You know what? It's not an important constituency. It's like 5 people. Number one, it's not a lot of people. Number two, even if it were 1 million people, even if it were 5 million people, even if it were 30 million people, you do not pander to the worst people the planet has to offer. You do not pander to Americans who don't understand what Americanism and promote an ideology that is contra Americanism, you do not do that for political gain. That is sick and it is vile. Okay, and there are a lot of people who were doing it during the campaign, and it's continued now, and it should stop immediately. And even people on the right now know this, okay? A lot of people on the right now know. Now, listen, I feel the same way about the left. When it comes to the left, who won't denounce Antifa? When it comes to the left, they won't denounce the Marxist intersectionality philosophy that they've been promulgating. When the left won't denounce riots in Ferguson or Baltimore. When the left continues to pretend that violence in places like Berkeley and Sacramento and Seattle and Richmond and Charlottesville, coming from the left, when they pretend all of that is no problem at all, the only problem is that of the right, all they are doing is pushing people into the arms of the alt-right. You have two vile movements pushing more and more people into each other's arms. It's horrifying. It's horrifying and disgusting.
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. And I said, we need to build a wall.